All right, we are back. We have Evan Friedkin with us. Evan is the head of business development with Roobrik. I got to meet Evan at Argentum last year and enjoyed spending some time with him, getting to know him. And I really enjoyed getting to know him better as we prepared for Ask Day. So, Evan, I'll tell you this, your presentation title won for my favorite because I also do not like speaking with salespeople, even though that's a part of my job. And so for anyone who has not read Evan's presentation title, it's I hate talking to salespeople. Some of your prospects do too. So I think it was a Zig Ziglar quote that said, everyone loves to buy, but no one wants to be sold. And so I felt like that was somewhat applicable to what you're going to be speaking about. But before we get into that, Evan, do you have an interesting fact that you'd like to share about yourself?
Yeah, I get asked this from time to time, and it is, I think the most interesting one is that I bowl overhand.
That's incredible. Do you have any YouTube videos that you could share?
Not publicly. It's
Got
just
it.
a small group of other overhand bowlers that we associate together nationally.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. We look forward to the presentation, and I'll let you take it from here.
Cool. I appreciate it, Larry. All right, let me share my screen and navigate the Zoom box that always naturally goes straight in the way. So thank you, Larry. As Larry mentioned, the topic of today is ironically, I hate talking to salespeople, and really digging into the fact that some of your prospects do too. And I specify ironically because if you see in the top left corner of my screen, I am Evan Friedkin. I head up business development here at Roobrik. Business development is also just another name for leading sales. And so I am a salesperson and legitimately do not like talking to salespeople. And so to kick it off, I want to start off with 3 quick stories to really dig in on this topic. And so the first one is going to be one that happens to me and they're all going to be personal. So bear with me as I run through them, but they will articulate different stages of the decision-making process during any purchasing decision. So the first one is basically happens on a weekly basis. You may have found yourself in this situation, which is every time I walk into a store, the salesperson at the front door says, "Hey, how are you? What brings you in today?" And the first thing out of my mouth instinctively, every single time without fail, is my hands go in the air and I say, "No, I'm good. I'm just looking." When I think about that, I basically didn't answer the salesperson's question, which is what brings you in today. I just told her I was not interested in whatever she was going to ask me for. And also, I probably know exactly what it is that I walked into that store for. I may just not have known exactly where that product was. So I find myself navigating the aisles quite frequently, wandering aimlessly, trying to find that product, trying to understand a little bit more about it. So in reality, that salesperson probably could have helped me. I just shouldn't have had that gut reaction of, "No, I'm good. I'm just looking." Because in reality, I was just searching, couldn't find it. Then I find it and I'm able to move on with my life. The next one is a little bit different. It's a little bit more of a complex decision. And this is one that I just recently went through. I just purchased a car. And it was kind of it was a big decision. And so to really drill in on the fact that I will do everything I can to avoid the sales conversation or that feeling of being sold to. Earlier on, when I was arriving at what type of car I was looking at, I knew I had no choice but to step foot in that dealership. And when I walked in, I strategically brought my 2-year-old daughter right around dinner time so that I could look at the car, I could inevitably interact with the salesperson, ask what few questions I had, the remaining questions that I had. Right in time when he was about to get into the financial conversation, my 2-year-old started screaming because she was hungry. It was the perfect excuse to say, "Hey, I can't finish this today. Let's pick it up later." And we were able to leave. Fast forward 2 weeks, did some texting once I was basically at that decision, and I purchased a car on Friday last week. But I was planning ahead to avoid that salesperson and that sales interaction until I was ready to have that deeper conversation and move forward. The third example is a little bit different, further upstream, where I am top funnel. and which is I'm looking at doing a deck renovation on my house. And so as I was looking, I was in what we call here at Roobrik, this hidden market, early on in the decision-making process, trying to find those resources, trying to avoid the salespeople, trying to do everything I can to feel educated when I do eventually have that conversation. And as I was looking, I came across a tool that was designed to help me quantify the costs, understand what all the different features are within that deck. And as I was going through the question set, I accidentally opted in to get the results that I wanted to see. And I started getting those cold calls from different sales teams. Wasn't great. I have not picked up a single one. I accidentally opted in, and I was looking for something that could just help me along in that decision-making process. So you might be wondering, okay, Evan, you just told me 3 examples of purchases where you basically made your decision harder on yourself than it really needed to be. Yes, when I think about it, I am also aware of the fact that it does make it harder for myself when I try to avoid the salespeople, because I truly know that if I just dealt with it and had the conversation with the salesperson, it would probably cut down my decision-making time very, very quick, a lot. I wouldn't have to do all this research on my own, but for whatever reason, my mind doesn't work that way, and I want to avoid the salesperson. And a lot of your prospects also feel that same way. And so you're also probably wondering, okay, none of that has anything to do with senior living sales. Yep, I got it. Decision-making is decision-making, sales is sales. The difference really is with senior living, it is a much more complicated, a lot more emotional. It is a very difficult decision. So everything I just described in those relatively easy decisions, like a deck or a car or an everyday purchase, becomes blown up into a larger proportion when somebody is going through the heat of the decision of, should I make the decision to move to senior living or talk to a salesperson at a community? And so the hidden audience becomes even more pronounced. And so that front end of the funnel that I described, and especially with the deck search, becomes even more severe. And it's on us as a senior living community to figure out, how do I tap into that audience and make sure that we're giving them the experience that we need to get them to feel comfortable and confident to have the conversation with the salesperson. The key word in there is experience. Sales teams do an amazing job when consumers take that step and come in for a tour in a community and build that experience, show them the different areas, the amenities, the features, all of the different things that community has to offer, digging into where are things today, where do they want things to go in the future. And what's missing is that bridge from the digital search over to the in-person search. And so here at Roobrik, basically what we've done is we've created this digital experience to help people really understand, where are things today, what's important to them. And we use what's called motivational interviewing, or decision aids in the medical space is what that's called, to help really drill in on, this is a complex decision. Here is what all of the resources you have at your fingertips to make it really easy for them to take that next step. And so what I want to do today is dive into, well, who is this? Who are these people that just dislike talking to salespeople, and how do we engage them? And so earlier, a few weeks ago, we released our mid-year report where we dig into what that hidden audience is, or the hidden market. So quick overview, it's data across 41,000 consumer assessments that live on senior living communities' websites. That is across 1,400 communities, which is about 150 providers. And so the data we're going to be looking at is, who are the people that are walking in the front door saying, no, I don't want to talk to the salesperson, which is a contact form or a chat or something like that, but do want to dig a little bit deeper. And we're going to look at kind of who are they and what motivates them, and how can we engage and tap into that hidden market to get those people ready to have the conversation with sales. This just kind of summarizes how we get the data, where it's coming from. And the first thing I want to jump out at us is a vast majority of these people that are on the community's websites that are proactively avoiding contact forms do tend to be the older adult themselves. They are, it's not always the adult children. Yeah, there is about 30-ish% or so that are looking for the adult, but 53%, 54 almost, are the ones that are really digging into what are their options and doing some of that future planning. And so when we look at those older adults, we want to figure out, okay, well, how do they differentiate, or how do they differ from what we typically see for the ones that are not like me when they metaphorically walk into that community or into the store and tell the salesperson, actually, I do need your help, and they're ready to talk. What we find, they're actually pretty young. They Where You Live Matters reports that the average age of a current resident is about 84 years old. Whereas what we're finding in our tools, the older adults tend to be a little bit younger. About 8,000 of them fall into that 76 to 85 range, and then almost 8,000 fall into the 66 to 75 range. And so it tells us that they might be earlier in their search. They may be doing a lot of this research, and actually maybe further down the funnel, like I was with buying the car. Salesperson probably thought that I was just searching, but in reality, I was ready to buy it a week later. And so in reality, what we find is a mix. People sometimes are doing that early search and prepaying or laying the bricks multiple years down the road. Others might actually be ready to make the change within the next few months. When we look at what's driving their decision, I'm going to take curious about options off the table, because that is obviously the equivalent of, for me, saying, no, I'm good, I'm just looking, and really look at the next three. So the next three that are selected it's not overly surprising that these people are forward thinkers. They are planners. They're trying to get their ducks in a row before they make the decision to have the conversation. So majority of them are thinking about maybe current care needs, but in reality, it's realistically future care needs. They're trying to plan for, well, what does the future look like for me? They're also looking at, hey, it might be time to consider downsizing. They don't want the upkeep of the current home that they're in. They're empty nesters. They're trying to find something that might be a little bit easier to maintain and ease their lifestyle. And then obviously this is significantly less, but there's a few that are pretty concerned about loneliness and isolation, but it's not an overwhelming amount like the previous two. Again, sticking to that planning mentality. A vast majority of them have done some form of planning or just need a little bit more help understanding their options when it comes to finance. And so for this audience, again, if we can just continue to provide resources for them to help them feel confident around financials, we're going to do a pretty good job of moving them forward and having that conversation. This one I find interesting. So when we look at the older adults and the fact that they're younger, they tend to be making this decision or thinking about this decision on their own, which is always great to hear, because we don't have any last minute influencers that can come in and derail the conversation for us. Of the 34% that are not doing it on their own, they're actually on the same page with the rest of their influencers. And if we can get everybody on the same page, we can move forward. And so what's great about this is it means that the other people that are involved in this decision are there supporting. They're going to help in kind of moving this prospect along and helping them get to the end result, which hopefully is the community that you all represent. One of the things that when I say hidden audience, it's not uncommon for me to hear, oh, they are so top of funnel, they're not going to be making decisions for years. Our data suggests otherwise. That again, if you come back to my car example, just because I may act like a top of funnel lead for a salesperson, it doesn't mean that I'm going to move at the same pace as somebody who is an actual top of funnel. The way I make decisions is I'm going to push off that face-to-face conversation as long as possible. I am going to try to get 90 to 98% of the way there, so that all I have to do is get the last 2% of my questions or uncertainties, or just need a little confidence boost. I just need that last 2% to get over that hurdle. And once I'm there, I'm ready to make that decision quick. And so, yeah, there are going to be some people in here that do have a little bit of a longer time horizon, but a lot of them tend to be further downstream and tend to want to make a decision pretty quick. And so what we find is, whoops, I didn't mean to skip ahead. What we find is, so we ask one of the questions, which is, well, what do you need to see to help make the decision easier? And so they're going to tell us what it is they have not seen to date to make them feel comfortable and confident to have the conversation. And what's interesting is it's understanding what it's like behind the doors of the community. Huge opportunity tells me that for marketing teams, keep leaning into those videos, show them what a day in the life of a resident looks like, give them a peek behind the doors, let them understand what activities, what does the dining look like, give them a view into what goes on over there. And so really lean into resources, especially for this audience. If you've got cost calculators, use them. If you've got different ebooks that can help dig into the different topics, use them. This audience is going to be very, very eager to use anything that does not feel like a sales tool or like a marketing tool. And they're going to probably utilize several different resources that you may provide. The more resources you can provide, the better. And if you take it even further downstream, if you can track which ones they're going to and share that with the sales teams, you're gonna find that the sales teams become even more effective. Then we ask right at the end, before they say, hey, actually, do you want to change your mind and have a conversation with the salesperson? Or we say, hey, well, what option do you think makes the most sense? What's interesting is 68% of them tell us that a senior living apartment or community is what they think makes the most sense. So a vast majority who come to the websites will proactively avoid the salesperson have already arrived at the decision that what the senior living industry offers is what they need or what they want. And I'm going to differentiate need versus want. This audience, those hidden audience, they are not making a needs-based decision. This is a wants-based decision primarily. They're making more of a lifestyle change. And so again, if we can give them the right digital experience to allow them to articulate where they are today, what resources they may need, come to that realization on their own without being face-to-face with a salesperson, but also help them understand what exactly is senior living as an industry, not specifically that specific community. We're able to get them to say, actually, you know what, I'm further down in our language as sales and marketers, I'm actually further down the funnel than I may have otherwise thought. And if you can do that effectively in the digital realm, you can get people to change their minds and choose to talk to your sales teams at a much higher rate. And when all of that information is met up with the salesperson, it becomes a really great conversation for the salesperson as well as the consumer to both go into that conversation much more armed, much more ready. It's a much more productive conversation for everybody involved. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. But before I do, the points that I want to drill home is lean into the resources, help this hidden audience really understand what it is you all do every day, help them dig into how do we pay for care? Do they need the care? What is it like in your communities? They really do need the support. And if they can't find it through your brand, they're going to go to Google. And we all know what shows up on Google when you Google senior living anything. And that is a great way to cause this hidden audience to delay their decision. They get paralysis by analysis, or they may end up on a third-party aggregator's site. And we definitely don't want that, especially if they came to your community's websites first. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions and take it from there.
Evan, that was great. Very, very relatable, especially the car buying experience. I went through something similar. I had somewhat of a good idea of what I wanted. I went to the lot, and after speaking with one representative, I was like, I can't do this. And so I kind of had a good idea of what I wanted. And I went to Carvana and purchased my car right then and there and was done. But it shows you, like, if you have a good idea of that buyer's journey and understand you know what you want already, that hidden audience is going to do a lot of their homework ahead of time and get the answers they need to make those decisions. And one thing I thought was really interesting was you're talking about how at the right time when they engage the sales team, it actually makes the conversations better. And I feel like it's a much more transparent conversation, and they don't have their guard up, so they actually can get to, the questions that they want to ask instead of going through that exploration phase.
Yeah, we should have brought a 2-year-old. That's a great way to end the conversation.
I like that. That was well done. Well done. That's a pro move right there. So I'm impressed with that. Let's see here. I think we have a question from Mark. He said, do you get many abandonments halfway through the questions because people feel it's getting too salesy? I think that's a great question, Mark.
That is a great question. So the answer to that question is no. If we're going to get abandonments, they tend to be in the first 2 to 3 questions. That's typical survey attrition. People are curious, they get into it and they're like, this isn't really for me. They bounce off. What we have found is that in that first window where we're asking some of these a little bit more complex questions that are really digging into their current situation, we'll actually find that people bounce off of the assessment in that first little window, go back to the community and fill out a contact form. So we've done enough education that they're like, actually, I do want to talk to somebody, and they'll just go. For the rest, so we asked 23 questions in our tool. And once you get past question number 3, from our standpoint, of the 30,000 people going through it every month, we typically will see about a less than 1% drop off per question, no matter how many questions we add on to the end. So it's typically about a 40 to 60% completion rate. There's a range because it depends on the type of digital traffic that the community is sending to the website. So if it's paid traffic, expect closer to 40%, but organic traffic that is proactively seeked out the community, it's closer to 60%.
That's interesting. Dave, did you have a question?
Well, just one. The one thing that jumped out at me is one of the early on graphics where you're showing the age breakdown. Something I'm starting, I'm still in that age in my early 40s for my parents or that customer still. But as Gen X moves, and I'm the low end, but upper Gen X is mid 50s. Are you seeing now the system still works? It doesn't matter, but are you seeing any shift in the way people engage, or as Gen X pushes in to be that primary consumer or educators, or it's still early, but maybe are you seeing anything where it's the way the questions we're asking, answering, the way we're interacting with things like Roobrik are changing, or preferences are changing, anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's still early to see a trend. I think inevitably we're going to see that number probably come maybe even a little bit younger because it tech savvy. We are seeing kind of early indicators is less of it is being done on a desktop. 68% of our survey completions or our assessment completions are being done on a smartphone. And so a vast majority are being done right there at our fingertips, which is probably a pretty good early indicator. We'll take a look at that same breakout again when we go through our kind of end of year report, and we'll take a look at how that's changing, because that is something that we think about a lot. Is the dynamic of this hidden audience, is it changing? Which I think if we're kind of making a theory about it, I think the answer is yes. So yeah, stay tuned for the end of year report where we'll actually dig into that in much more detail.
Nice.
Cool. Awesome.
I feel like sales has changed, shifted drastically in the last 10 years, and specifically in the last 3 years, really after COVID, where, back in the time, the salesperson was the one who educated on the process and the plans and all, the highlights of whether it's a community or, any other services that's provided, where now sales at the right time is pulled in to actually give peace of mind. Have that person who they can reach out, the potential resident can reach out to and actually have a good dialogue and provide that comfort that someone does, it does care, and that there is a human body on the other side of all the automation and all the content to, pull that last stage of that funnel.
I agree 100%. So the way we think about it, or the way I think about it, is historically we went through a period where the salesperson consumer relationship was not in balance. The weight was all on the salesperson's side, where it was information asymmetry, where in order for the consumer to get the information, they had no choice but to go to the gatekeeper, i.e. salesperson. And so they had to. It created this dynamic where the consumer was like, they begrudgingly had those conversations. And it was probably pretty frustrating, where you probably heard the phrase, "Let me go talk to my manager." I heard that all the time at the dealership, because they held basically they held everything. And so now with the rise of Google, it shifted and it balanced the scales. Whatever that salesperson knows, the consumer can get it too, or they think they can get it. Whether or not it's accurate, different story. That's a conversation or a topic for a different day. But we're now in a position where it's information parity, which is why if we're sticking with the car buying, you go to CarMax, you walk in and the salesperson, there are screens everywhere, because the salesperson knows that you can find the information online. So what they do is they become basically a guide along with you, doing the research process on the cars with you in real time. And there's no negotiation, because they know that it is a transaction. There probably shouldn't even be negotiation anyways, because everybody knows what it costs to build the car. And so they've kind of leaned into this idea of information parity where everybody's on the same page. So I think that's what you're probably noticing, where they think they can get the information, whether or not it's accurate is a totally different story.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say information parity. I feel like it's kind of shifted more to the buyer, where they're actually asking the questions, to the salesperson of like, this is what others can offer. Can you offer this? So it is funny how that dynamic has shifted so much.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's great. That's ideal for the salesperson, because now they're being more of a resource.
100%. That's where we all need to be. And that's what makes people like the salesperson they're speaking with, and they don't feel like they're being sold to. So, hey, that was great, Evan. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And if you have any other questions, reach out to Evan. Evan, where can people find you if they want to further connect?
Definitely on the bowling alley with my small group of friends that are overhand bowling. No, but all joking, I do not bowl overhand. That was something.
Why did you have to give that up? That was great.
Yeah. I haven't done it maybe once or twice. It's called shot put. But in reality, you can find me. We got Roobrik, Roobrik.com. Shoot me an email. It's just evan@Roobrik.com. Always happy to answer any questions that come up. Always happy to talk about the hidden audience and how people just want to avoid salespeople at all costs.
Awesome. What conferences will you be at this fall?
It's a list. It is, so I'll start it off at A.S.K and Cal in Denver, then immediately the following week, head over to Napa for SLIF. Following week will be at Smash. The following week, I'll be at Nick in Chicago. And then the following week will be at Leading Age in Chicago. So I'll probably be sleeping the following week after Leading Age.
You're going to be a busy person.
Yeah. So if anybody's always happy to connect while we're at the conferences.
Sounds good. All right, Evan, thank you so much. Everybody, we're looking forward to our next presentation, which will happen in about 8 minutes, I believe. So see everyone soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.